So today I'll talk about our goal at Skild AI towards building a general brain for any robot, any task. So any robot, any task, one brain. But I've tried to make the talk a bit more educative, not just showing what we do, but generally the field of where the robotics is. And seeing the crowd here and in general in GTC, everybody knows that there is a huge unmet global labor crisis. If you look at the current, there are a lot of people, there is employment crisis, but at the same time, there are more jobs that we need people for than we have laborers available. And this is a growing concern everywhere. The world population is aging, and there's unmet demand for growth and industrialization. Same story in US. Like if you look at with the aging gap, aging population going up, participation going down, robotics is not really the decision, it's a survival for most companies out there. This is very clear even from GTC. This is Jensen, I think it was last GTC in last year. And it has been very clear that physical AI is the next frontier of AI in general, right? But there is an unfortunate case with robotics. Robotics has always been almost here for the last 70 years. Now, robotics is not the next frontier of AI. If you go back and read about Turing and all the initial results in AI, they were made for robotics. Like AI got developed for robotics, keeping robotics in mind. This goes very back, like all the way back to this MIT copy demo. Like this is a robot back in, I think 1950s. And this robot sees this image, and then it could assemble the blocks on the table to match that image that you see over there. So robot is autonomously trying to pick up the blocks and make the same structure in there. Now, it's a simple task for humans, but if you think about this, it requires understanding what the image is, understanding 3D, understanding the structure, and then applying that to motor control and control the power to motors to do this. This was back in 1960, so 60 years ago, okay? This video, I don't know if you've seen this before, I just play it, it's an amazing one.
One exhibit at the Nuclear Congress in Philadelphia has the perfect formula for popular...
If you have seen robots today, you will find the exact same setup. This is a follower arm, lighting a matchstick. It's not politically correct today, but it's like... So look at this person controlling the robotic arms from the back. This is the setup that you will find every robotics company using today, right? Can anybody guess the year of the video? Actually, the voice gives it away and the background color. If I applied a Gen AI filter on top and change the voice, you will think it's from last year. But this is from 1957, almost 70 years ago. I'm sure that most people here were not even born when this video was shot, right? This is 70 years ago. Imagine 70 years ago, where were computers? They were not there, right? The RAM used to be in bytes. And how far we have come in 70 years in language and vision, and where we are in robotics. Now you might say, okay, this is teleoperation, but today we have autonomous videos, okay? Robots doing parkour. Look at these videos. Robot doing juggling. Here it is playing, I always forget the name of the game. This is something like foosball. Okay, air hockey, yes. So this is from 1994. Juggling, everything. And it's all autonomous because you cannot teleoperate these tasks at such high frequency, right? Now, even you might have seen recent results on VLAs and all this, like robots doing pick and place. This is 8 years ago, done by a single PhD student at Berkeley, the work called DexNet. And one student, one GPU machine, no fancy cluster, and it could do results like this. So what is really going on? Seems like robotics has always been coming for the last 70 years, but still not here. And the main reason behind this is the brain. As soon as you build a hardware, there will be people around the world who can make that hardware do magical things. But if you need a result that is very general, can be deployed everywhere, you need it to perform beyond training set. And that is what has been the Achilles heel of robotics. we do not know how to transfer things across it from one scenario to other scenario, which is where LLMs and VLMs succeed very well today. This is basically what is also called Moravec's paradox. Who is Moravec? You might have heard the term. Hans Moravec was also CMU professor, coincidentally. And he was one of the initial founding figures in AI and robotics in 1950s. After 30 years of working in robotics and AI in general, they came to this conclusion that hard is easy, easy is hard. And I'll emphasize this throughout the talk. What does that mean? What humans generally believe is hard actually is very easy for AI. For instance, playing checkers, playing backgammon. Back in the day, those who are above 40, 50 years old, they know about backgammon game from 1970s. That's like chess and Go today. Now, you can automate those things back in 1980s. We could play chess in 1990s and beat Garry Kasparov. But moving a chess piece like a kid would on a board, it's still very hard. So we impart a lot of credibility to humans who can perform 0.01% better than other humans. If you can throw a ball into a hoop from this distance, people will pay $1 million to watch you. And that is the main crux behind this thing. What we believe is easy actually is hard for robots, and hard is easy. And I'll go through examples to see why is the case. Now, what is different today and how do we go about this? How do we not make robotics the same problem that has been around for 70 years and actually make progress on this? Okay. Now, what is different today than was in the last 70 years is deep learning. Okay. So what is the magic sauce of AI success today? It's very straightforward. Okay. Get lots and lots of data, like lots of data, more than you can imagine. Then train as big a model as possible. Generally, pick the biggest one you can fit on a GPU or the biggest one you can train today. Okay. And then magic happens. You can create hundreds of millions to billions of dollars of companies and 5 trillion, as you can see today, where NVIDIA is. So this is the magic sauce of AI. Okay. Now, with everybody talking about robotics being the next frontier of AI, this magic sauce has this big problem, which is the first thing. It needs data. And this data is at massive scale. To put in perspective, if you look at models like GPT, now people don't even release how much they are trained on. GPT 3.5 was trained on 100 trillion tokens. 100 trillion. Okay. Now, this scale is very hard to achieve in robotics because there is no data available on the internet. So I cannot go to Wikipedia, Google, and download all the images to train these models, right? Similarly, 100 trillion is a very big number, and it's very hard for humans to fathom how big a trillion is. So you can say, we'll go and collect data on the robot. We'll just go and teleop everywhere, and we'll collect that scale. Now, there have been massive attempts at trying to scale teleop already out there. The biggest one from Google, for instance, the RTX paper, which I was also part of. Over there, the size of robotics data set is less than 1 million, the biggest one out there. The difference between 1 million and 100 trillion is 100 trillion. Okay? So it's very difficult to scale things in robotics because the scale at which AI really works. So this is where we are trying to bridge this gap. And at Skild, what we are doing is we are building a general purpose foundation model for robotics. It's a truly general brain, which can work across multiple hardware, multiple tasks, multiple scenarios. Okay? Any robot, any task, one brain. Now, on surface, it may sound like, okay, it's a very general model. But if you think about this, what I'm arguing for here is completely absurd. I'm saying one brain for any hardware, whether it's a humanoid, whether it's a quadruped, whether it's arm, hand, etc. Now, why should we go this general? The reason for that is, in some sense, robotics has data problem. To address the data problem, we need data. In that scenario, beggars can't be choosers. We cannot say, I'll only use data from my robot, this version, that scenario. Like robots may change. There will be variety of robots, different companies, different form factors that get deployed around the world. And we should be able to use data from every source. So as a first principle, if you're trying to create and make use of big data, you should rather not have constraint on what data you use. That is the magic behind LLMs. Like the reason LLMs work so well, because they could make use of all kind of data on the internet without making a choice of clean data sets. And that is the main goal behind this. So our goal is to use every possible data source on the planet of decision making and make this into this general brain. I'll explain this throughout the process to how it works across scenarios, but let me give a brief preview of how it works across robots. So in this video, you will see a variety of robots. They are all controlled by the Skild Brain. It's a bit fast-paced video, so I'll show in slow motion afterwards. So in this scenario, every decision, controlling motors at the lowest level, or deciding when to turn, when to go straight, or using objects, is all controlled by the same model, same brain. You can transfer across robots day and night. Across different degrees of freedom of robots, 6 DoF to 7 DoF, 7 DoF to 6 DoF, deciding when to turn. And it's extremely robust. Yeah. The model operates directly from vision. So it's very stable in scenarios where you need to coordinate vision with action. So climbing stairs, etc. Or even doing tasks that are more precise, like packing, etc. By the way, that's the trail on the ground over there. This is off trail. We had to shoot that video 3 times because our cameraman kept falling, trying to climb with the camera on top. Long-term navigation, everything part of the same model. All right. So how do we train this model? Okay, let's go in a bit more detail. Now in robotics, there is no data set out there, right? And I cannot collect one because it's very slow to collect. So in some sense, robotics today is facing what I call chicken and egg problem, right? To get robot data, they have to be deployed in large number, but to deploy them, they need to work, but to make them work, they need data. And that's where every company, every lab around the world is stuck for years. Now, this is not really a, I would say, multi-decade problem because scaling data in robotics is a very recent phenomenon. Like robotics was a field where you would try to model everything pragmatically. You would design objective functions, optimization to do this, right? Now, but how do we take off robotics in the era of AI today? So our argument is, since there is no data for robotics, we have to leverage alternate sources of data, okay? Which is not robot data. Now, there is indeed one robot out there which functions 24/7 all around the world. And those robots are basically humans. We are biological robots, right? Instead of motors, we have joints. Instead of power, we have motor neurons. So we can really look at how humans manipulate the world around us and use that knowledge to guide robots. But then there is issue with videos. The issue is videos do not give you an idea of forces. You cannot just learn by watching. Because if you could learn by watching, many of us here could play like Federer, having watched his games gazillion times. But that's not enough. You have to practice, and you have to practice on your own and understand forces. And that is where we use the second source, which is simulation. Simulation, the nice part of simulation is you can scale as much as you can. And when the forces, you can manipulate the forces, you can randomize them. But the issue is, it's very hard to make it match the real world. And secondly, it's even more difficult to program every scenario in simulation. It takes a long time to create even one scene. Videos give you diversity. They have diversity of the whole world. We can easily see how humans are doing, how humans are moving objects. But in simulation, you have forces. So videos fill the negatives of what is missing in simulation, and simulation fills the negative of what is missing in videos. Put them together in the right manner. It's a very deep recipe for bootstrapping robotics. One by itself is not sufficient. But put together in the right framework, you can actually do magic from this scenario. So our main high-level idea is we pre-train our models using simulation and human videos. Okay? Videos gives you guidance as to how to operate. They give you diversity of visual scenarios. So visual diversity and guidance. Simulation give you scale and the notion of contact and forces. Then at post-training time, if needed, if zero-shot doesn't work, then you can add some tele-op data. Okay? Now, what is tele-op data? Tele-op data is low scale, but high quality, right? Because it's being collected on the robots directly. And it's very hard to scale, but it's very high quality, which is exactly the right recipe for post-training, where we use LLMs for. The second scenario in robotics is deployment data. Over the years, as we scale deployment, this second factor keeps on increasing. So then we add it back to the pre-training recipe as well. Okay, so this is the data on the data flywheel that we are building at scale, bootstrapping it with simulation and human videos to begin with. So this is our vision towards going towards any robot, any task, one brain. Okay. Now, when you start this kind of procedure, whether it's fine-tuning or pre-training, you may collect one examples. Then how do you expand from those examples to training on a lot more scenarios than you have data for? So you can also use tools like you have seen probably already, like NVIDIA Cosmos, right? It gives you a variety of ways to start with one scene and then produce multiple scenarios around it. So we also use these scenarios for robotics as well. So here you can see so this is robot's dream. So robot is thinking inside its own brain. And each background that you see keeps on changing, completely different scenarios, and it's all happening through this large video model learning inside the robot's brain. Now you can take one example and make 10,000 examples out of it. So you can really go and scale this much faster. So then with that, you can actually put this on any kind of robot, whether it's a humanoid in the scenario. So this robot is never trained in this scene, in this house, and we put it in this house for the first time. And it can still transfer because the visual diversity can come from videos and the augmentation it has seen from video models. So this involves some kind of coordination. It has to transfer things from left to right hand. But the interesting part is this whole scene is completely at test time. So you never train on this scenario in this setting. You can change the scene, you can change the objects, and the robot can still transfer to each of these setups. Now the idea is when you create a data mixture from videos and simulation, you are combining multiple sources together. In this scenarios, it was trained combination of two, but we can also learn even from just only videos as well. This more looks like a dorm room. I'm not sure where you are shooting these videos. But the robot can keep on going in variety of setups, etc. So we can also apply the same approach to learning just from videos. Okay, we can take a bunch of human videos either on the internet or you can collect them and learn from these videos. But the idea is, if you learn just from videos, it's very difficult to do very precise tasks because you don't have the notion of forces and contact. So in this scenario, we can transfer it to simple tasks. In this case, like open something, pick up a bottle. It's not a fine-grained contact task because you're just going and grabbing the bottle tightly and moving it. But if you had a more complex task, just learning from videos is not enough. But this is showing an example that even from just videos, you can go very far. You don't have to always need all kinds of data mixture. This is all happening from vision, end to end. The whole robot is being balanced while it's doing these tasks, etc. So you can make this robot do a variety of things by just watching human videos without collecting any amount of robot data in the real world. But these are not precise tasks, okay? When it comes to precise tasks, this is one example of putting AirPods. Now, I'm sure many people here keep losing AirPods. It's a very common thing. In our company as well, we have a Slack channel called Right AirPods because everybody keeps losing their right AirPod. So it's a pretty complex task. Now the interesting part here is these are not real AirPods. They are fake ones from Temu. So wait. So they're actually harder because they don't have the magnetic pull at the end. You have to actually go and insert that. Note few more things here. There is no gripper on the, no hand on the robot. It's just a very simple gripper, open and close gripper, right? There is too much focus today around hands. That, okay, hands are the reason we don't have robotics. Like every decade, there is a new reason for why we don't have robotics today, almost like fusion, right? So the reason is, if you have powerful brain, you can even make very simplistic grippers, such open and close, and make them do many things. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that hands are not needed, but they are very hard to make, and there are no good hand hardware around the world, which can last long hours. And we can make these kind of complex tasks even with grippers. There is another, even slightly more complex. There's like inserting cables, etc. Now you can do these results by just post-training on about a week of data. This is not super hard as well. But the interesting part here is robot is inserting them back to back in the side-by-side slots. This is an old video, about an year old. Now we can do it much faster at human speed. So it has to figure out and go inside. So these are examples of precise tasks, what you would like these machines to do. Okay. Now, going back to again a few points here. So one thing to note in this scenario, where is the timer here? Okay. Here. One thing to note in this scenario is, if you look at any robotics pipeline today out there are multiple stages in the pipeline. There is mapping, there is planning, there is controllers, and then there is output. When people say we are using AI, or even AI researchers or labs, AI can be applied to any of these pieces. It might be just in planning, it might be just in mapping, or just in controllers. Usually, the last box is not AI-driven in most scenarios. In whatever results I'm showing on stage today, everything is done end-to-end. So it's not a stage-wise approach. You can see that robots are mapping, planning, going around scenarios, but all that is emergent. It's not being programmed into the system. Okay? Now, with this kind of idea that you can operate from input to output directly, input can be your vision, can be force, can be haptics, whatever is available on the robot. And output is directly motor commands. So this is end-to-end learning from vision. Now, this part is very critical. You may have seen many videos out on the internet of robots doing parkour, dancing. This is also one of our results. The robot, we learned it from the trajectory on the internet. Now the interesting part is, let me actually pause this. These videos are super cute, so they distract us. Now, one thing you will, pause the video. One thing, my point here is, you have seen this, but have you ever seen humanoids doing long set of stairs? That's the only reason why you have legs, right? Is to go every possible scenario, not carpet, because you can use wheels on carpet. But nobody realizes this part. Everybody is mesmerized by parkour, dancing, etc., but not by stairs. Why? This is the same thing haunting us after 50 years again. Moravec's paradox at play. Even for robotics researchers, Moravec's paradox is a learning shift which always keeps on happening. Now you may think, how is this Moravec's paradox? These are both robotics. I thought it's for robotics and language, but no. The thing is, for humans, dancing, kung fu is very hard. Why? Because it requires fine balance. For us, stair is very easy because every single human, every single animal can do it. So we don't give value to this one. We give value to this, right? But the interesting part is, from computer's perspective, the right one is almost trivial because this does not require any interaction. I am moving my whole body myself, and this is something which computers are good at. That's why we have planes flying around for the last 100 years, because they are flying in the sky, where there is nothing, no contact, nothing out there. This is the same idea over there. A computer can really program itself to move itself in any way possible. But this one requires interaction with the world. When you're walking on stairs, the vision has to interact with the body. Even a single misstep in the robot can cause the robot to tumble, right? Now, this model is completely from vision end to end, so we can actually make these robots do complex things on stairs. Very simple things, this is from vision. When it comes near the gap, it actually stops and then takes next step, like how humans do. But these fine-grained decisions, which humans do every millisecond, we don't count as intelligence, but they are the main reason behind human intelligence. Now, you can do some of these things blind, by the way, because it requires balancing. But the interesting part is the robot is stepping before the obstacle comes. This is our beautiful Pittsburgh office. Now, these are fire escape stairs. I find it always surprising that the hardest stairs are in the fire escape. It should be the opposite. When everybody's trying to rush, the hardest stairs are there. So here it can go in each of these scenarios. It is also robust on stairs. This, by the way, is superhuman. Try pulling somebody from their neck backwards when they're climbing up. It's a torque force you're applying on the robot. Again, super robust. So not only we can do this, but we can do it robustly. This is the only humanoid video result in the world where a humanoid is doing long set of stairs back to back without falling, of course. So this is why you have legs, okay? Not to do dancing, parkour, etc. They're although easy, but parkour actually is indeed fun. So I'll also show parkour videos just for fun. I noticed a kid in the background watching all these video shoot happening. See, that's the problem. That's the problem with parkour. As soon as the robot did the first jump, everybody shouted, ooh. But on the stairs, you don't feel that way. This is Moravec's paradox in real life. This is an example of that, right? Now, somebody asked in the last video, can the robot go beneath that thing backwards? So we also tried that. Like, instead of going beneath it by folding hand, so model is balancing the whole body, and somebody is commanding the body to go down and then just go straight.
Oh, fuck, damn
it. Okay, so we don't have the robotics AGI yet. All right. So as the base model improves, you can actually transfer these results to other tasks as well. Even in the GTC keynote yesterday from Jensen, Skild is working with NVIDIA and Foxconn to automate their factory in Houston. This is a GP300 factory. And if you look at current factories today, the way things are built, humans do all these tasks manually, repeatedly over time. Many things are already automated, but what is not automated is this fine-grained task at the end, which require forces. So here we are collaborating with NVIDIA using their Omniverse platform to get more data than we can collect in the real world and have these robots automate this thing. This is very early. We just began, and this will be going live in early next year. So here is an example of robot doing the same task in the real world. And these are your GB300 GPUs. The robot is installing these bus bars. Now the interesting part here is this, it requires fine adjustment at the very end, and that's where you cannot use classical automation because you cannot precisely measure where that fitting and that slotting is. So the robot has to adjust at this part slowly. And this is all in a learned policy running end to end. So you can see it got stuck. Then now the human has to come and then move it. But in this case, the robot can do it automatically. So in the last few minutes, I want to talk about one last topic, this idea of omni-bodied brain, okay? Now, this is going beyond the generality of humans. Humans are not omni-bodied, actually, at least not yet. But then people may argue that, okay, I am building my own robot. Why do I need my brain to be omni-bodied and as this general? The issue is, if you have a robot, it may break, or it may have different scenarios. Now, do you want the whole robot to fall down and become dysfunctional? So here is an example. We trained a specialist model, which is also a skilled model, but it's not omni-bodied. Then you tied the legs. Right? And in this case, it's walking just fine. As soon as one leg breaks, and nobody expects these robots to work when the legs break. But that's the thing. Humans do not just do this. If you have a sprain in your ankle, you don't just do a backflip to prevent ankle sprain. So our idea is adaptation. Our model is continuously adapting in the real world. Okay, this is why we can function across all these robots in a very fluid manner. So instead of brute force memorization, the policies are learning to adapt. Okay. Now this idea actually is the reason why LLMs work today. LLMs, you may think that, okay, the reason is there is big scale, big data, but what's the technical reason? Technical reason is LLMs are zero-shot learner. So if you give an example to an LLM, like this is my text, I love pizza, convert that into emoji, and then you write something else, the sun is shining, the LLM can output something like this, right? So LLMs are learning in context. This is where when people say like the GPT models, etc., they're making the context set bigger, they want to learn by just looking at the context window instead of fine-tuning model in each of the scenarios. The same idea here, in this case as well, what we are getting signs of is what we call in-context learning for robotics. We are able to see first signs of in-context learning in robotics. Now, in-context learning has only been seen in LLMs so far, and it's only a 2 and 3 year old phenomena. This idea, this term of in-context learning was not even there 3 years ago. Okay. Now, for this last experiment, we'll do something very extreme. Okay. We remove all the robots from training set. So now the argument is not that you can work across multiple robots. The argument is these robots are never seen. Now, robots were never seen earlier, even earlier in the real world, but now they are not seen even in simulation. Okay? What does that mean? Like, what are we training them on? So here we train you on Omniverse scenarios, but instead of robots, all we have is like stick figures. We make them up by ourselves, it's programmatically. Add these sticks, add a bar, and create arbitrary robots, just weird looking shapes, etc. So no real robot in that whole training. Okay? And then the same model can transfer zero shot to any of the existing robot. Now here, what you see in this video, none of these robots were seen even during training set. It's the same model everywhere. So it's a truly omni-bodied system. Now, one thought experiment here is, let's say you are the model, okay? You are the omni-bodied brain, and I put you in this robot, but when I start the robot, I put it upside down like this. So on the rear two legs. Now, from this moment, if I turn on the brain, how do you know if this robot is a dog or a humanoid? There is no way you can tell, because humans used to be quadrupeds back in evolution, right? We have very symmetric legs and hands. So in fact, in this case, the model gets confused thinking it's a humanoid because we begin in the same situation. So it tries to walk like a humanoid, but it fails. But it's adapting in real time. So it's first trial, second trial, it could walk two steps, and third trial, zero shot, it can just go and just walk. Everything the robot saw, everything model saw in this example is in these 3 trials, nothing out of there. You can always train policies to walk like this, but this is fully emergent, happening on the fly. You can also do like crazier stuff. For instance, you can put like these fake legs on so it's walking fine. This robot is never seen. Then a person comes and attaches these fake legs. Of course, this is also never seen. And the robot in the beginning is adapting. And then it starts to walk after that. It gets stuck, but then it starts to walk. So it's adapting on the fly in all these scenarios. Similarly, In this scenario, what we do is we tie the leg. Oh, sorry. So in this scenario, we tie the leg of the robot. The same example as earlier, but it's adapting. Adapting still. Adapting, no longer shaking and jittering like earlier. Adapting, 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 adapting still. Now learn to walk. This is all happening on the fly. This is very extreme. In this case, we put this on a robot. There's 6 DOF hand, 16 DOF hand, 7 DOF arm, and there are 2 robots. So what they are supposed to do is they are supposed to take this cube and turn it to match this face. Now, what is emergent in this scenario is that robot learns to throw the cube across the side whenever the goal changes. So the goal is that cube over there, and the robot is supposed to turn it and then move it to that location, and that's the goal. So the whole transfer and catching and throwing is all emergent from this just single objective. Okay, so it's an omni-bodied brain in each of the scenarios. You may have seen a version of the video online with a different flavor. So here the leg breaks, it adapts online. So you're applying forces. So this guy thinks it's a humanoid. So even if you add the weight, it remains in a humanoid pose. It's second element. So it's going on wheels over here. As soon as you jam the wheels, it starts walking. Here we disable 2 legs on the fly. It's adapting. This is pretty extreme. This is across different manipulating robots. All right, thank you. So our goal, any robot, any task, one brain. Okay, yeah.
All right, we have a few minutes for some Q&A if anyone has any questions.
Got one over here. Hi, thanks. This was wonderful. I built the Humanoid for NASA back in the late 90s. So my question is, when you were showing it passing things back and forth between hands, we used to have it do an emergent, kind of weighting function so that it was most effectively using its body, which is far more capable than ours. So in that case, would it cost less to twist and dump rather than pass between back and forth hands? Are you doing that on purpose just to keep it trained that way? Or are you thinking of also building in that efficiency model where you can really have it take advantage of its unique composition?
This is a very good question. And I think earlier, the basic shift now is that earlier you would spend time trying to program how to use its body in a more efficient manner. But here we let the robot discover how to use its body. And the way we let it discover is the engineering goes from programming trajectories to the cost function. Okay? So one of the cost functions that we really use everywhere is energy. So we don't use anything, just energy. Do something, but be energy efficient. And if you look at the literature of the last, not robotics literature, because energy is very underappreciated over here, but if you look at biomechanics. So biomechanics is the field where people try to study how animals and humans move their limbs. And energy is a very ultimate guiding factor for many emergent properties across animals. So we use that here, and many of the behaviors you see are basically coming from energy directly. Can you start that mic?
Hi, Deepak. This is Devan from the Humanoid Hub. So Richard Sutton was on Dwarkesh's podcast recently, and he kind of pushed back on the idea that reinforcement learning, actually the imitation learning can be a good prior to RL. Where do you stand on that? And do you think there is one approach that leads to true intelligent robot?
Yeah. So if you think in the limit where Rick usually thinks, in the limit, there is no such thing as supervised learning. Everything is reinforcement learning. Like supervised learning is a subset of reinforcement learning when you have supervision almost every time step, pretty much, right? So in the limit, he's right. Like there is no supervision given to us humans. Everything came from calcium, magnesium ions, combined with electricity, and something happened along the way. So in the limit, everything is reinforcement learning, and here we are not really using in most scenarios. So we don't use supervised learning as a prior for reinforcement. So actually we abide by his principles to some extent. Here if we use human videos, which you can think as supervision, they are telling you what should be done. Like whether a human opens the door or a dog opens the door opens the same way, right, across the hinge. And that information is common. So whether you use reinforcement learning or supervised learning, that information stays the same. And we use videos for that information, not to exactly supervise the behavior.